Today's video is sponsored by War Thunder. Well, I pissed off YouTube. I set out exploring the history and evolution of firearms as a part of my ongoing exploration of all of humanity's important inventions, knowing that at some point a red line would be crossed with their firearm policies. I might have flown a little too close to the sun in my last video in this series, where I claimed by some of the thinnest technical definitions that it might be against their policies. And what I did not expect is for YouTube to basically agree with me. By most legal definitions, the bar for making a firearm is very far away. Muzzle loaders and basically anything before 1898 is usually not considered a firearm, but an antique or historic firearm that has much fewer restrictions. In fact, and this does vary with local laws, but federally, a felon who loses their rights to own a firearm can still legally buy a muzzle loader. YouTube, however, apparently disagrees with this and placed their definition of a firearm over 1 millennium earlier with the fire lance. In this video, I very certainly will cross the threshold into historic firearms with the earliest hand cannons. To comply with the letter of the law with YouTube's policies, and to try and keep this video from getting demonetized, at no point will I show or demonstrate how to manufacture a firearm. And to be clear, this is not a firearm. This is a recreation of an ancient relic of unknown purpose. There are competing theories about what exactly it might be, and personally, I think it's just a nifty cup. Then we're also gonna go test a hand cannon that I did not show you how to make. The earliest known example of a cannon is the Heilongjian hand cannon, which was cast out of bronze. However, every archaeological find is only a best guess, so its actual use is open to at least some debate. I assume, if I took long enough to look into it, I'm sure. So instead of violating YouTube's policy and demonstrating how to make a firearm, I'll be attempting to recreate what I believe is a very unique 13th century Chinese cup. The differences between making a bronze cup and a bronze firearm are of course massively different. There's so much information that goes into that, and that information is dangerous and forbidden. YouTube does not want me to share with you, and I have filled all of these folders with all of this very specific dangerous information. I'm going to make sure none of this is in the video. Instead, we will go through an entirely different process to make a bronze cup. Key to note in this ancient design is the bulbous shape towards the bottom of the cup. This is important as it provides extra reinforcement to the cup if there's ever a large buildup of force inside of it, like say pouring your beverage just too quickly. Later cups could be made without this bulbous shape as metal refinement improved and they switched to stronger metals like iron. The base of the cup is also socketed, allowing it to be attached to a pole to extend your reach. Perfect for sharing your beverage with your friend on the other side of the table. So let's start making that. First I'm going to go shred all of these documents so we don't get this information there. Also this one. 700 years ago, the first form of firearms arrived with the primitive hand cannon, changing the world of warfare forever in the centuries that followed. Today's sponsor lets you play the more recent history of warfare this technology unlocked. War Thunder drops you into massive battles with 2,500 historically accurate vehicles, tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from the 1920s to today. Whether you're into fast-paced arcade matches, ultra-realistic simulator battles, or something in between, there's a mode for you. Every part of your vehicle from engines to crew is simulated. You'll see exactly how you're taken out in the X-ray kill cam, which is incredibly satisfying. I personally love how deep the customization goes. There are tons of camouflages and historical markings, and you can even use community-made content. And now you can even play War Thunder on mobile and the brand new version for iOS and Android. Same epic battles optimized for your phone. Best of all, you can start playing for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile. Use my link in the pinned comment and video description to sign up, and if you're new or haven't played in the last 6 months on PC or console, you'll get a massive bonus pack with exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account. But this offer is only available for a limited time, so don't wait. In my last video in this series, I covered the predecessor of the firearm, the fire lance, whose use began in 10th century China. A simple bamboo or metal tube attached to a spear, they used gunpowder to shoot flames and occasionally shrapnel. The main difference between this weapon and a proper cannon is in how the projectiles are propelled. The fire lance was more of a flamethrower and ignited from the front. Small rocks and shrapnel would be propelled by the blast of the ignition, being simply swept along in the discharge. By the 12th and 13th century, metal-barreled versions replaced bamboo and gunpowder formulas improved, allowing the fire lance to evolve into an actual cannon. In contrast to the fire lance, by placing a tight-fitting shot in the barrel with gunpowder behind it, the gunpowder would ignite and create an intense and direct pressure from the expanding gases, propelling the bullet with great speed. If you look at our experiments with the fire lance, you'll see that these initial projectiles do not necessarily come out with much speed. Some appear to almost roll out of the barrel or just bounce off the target. I think you're looking at a small chance of these projectiles getting too much speed, but in comparison, the cannon is going to be very different. These cannons appeared around the mid-13th century, with one of the earliest examples dating to 1288. Although crude and inaccurate, hand cannons marked a critical shift from incendiary devices to ballistic weapons and saw quick use and spread in warfare starting from China, expanding first to the Mongolian Empire in the 13th century, then being adopted by the Islamic world in the 14th century, and then finally arriving in Europe by around 1320 to 1340. For this next step in the evolution of drinking vessels, I have a recreation of the oldest known surviving cup. And this is a hand cup from China. So now the hope is to cover this in plaster, melt out the mold, and do a lost wax cast in bronze of this cup. It should be a rough recreation of this historical object and hopefully won't blow up in us. So I have here the results of the first attempt at casting using my plaster molds. Unfortunately, did not go too well. I feel like I've never really had great success with the plaster molds. I was hoping after all these years of casting, I'd finally have some better results, but it's just very difficult to get it to actually work. I haven't done a large casting like this in a while, and when it came to actually cast it, I realized I didn't have the right size tongs for the size of crucible I was using. So I did improvise, which left my hand right over the flames. So midway through, I had to stop because my gloves were literally on fire, and that caused a gap in here. But even without that, there's a lot of other issues. Despite packing it in sand all around it to hold it together, it still was just so much weight that it split once I filled it all the way to the top. The other problem is that I was hoping to get it cast with the actual bored hole already in it, so I don't have to bore it out after. It would make things a lot easier, but the inside cavity for the bore hole ended up breaking, and you can see it kind of drifted. So this is mostly solid, some voids here that don't go all the way through, and the other part here. So I think just the mass of all the bronze pouring in, snapped it off, and it kind of floated in there. So at this point, I think I'm just gonna go back to sand casting. But first, let's make some crude tongs to save my hands on the next pour. Unfortunately, I ended up being a bit short on bronze for this pour, so let's try that once again. This time I tried a method I read about of using a wood placeholder to hold the vacancy for the barrel. It actually ended up working out a lot better than I expected. All right, so it took 3 different casting attempts. We finally got a pretty good result. It's a little bit shorter still, but we got a pretty decent cup. So, can fill it up with a little shot. Cheers. That's a great cup. But we are gonna test out an actual canyon, which we did not show you how to make. Completely different process than making a bronze cup, and for that we have the cannon right here. We're gonna test it out, see how well it works, see if it blows up or anything, and go from there. Cheers. Next, we need to make one more new improvement for our cannon: corned gunpowder. We previously made our gunpowder using 3 ingredients of charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter, but as a fine powder, you run into issues with it actually burning too quickly and in an uncontrolled manner. But in the 14th century, it was discovered that you could do a more controlled burn that actually required less gunpowder by doing a process called corning. For this, you would wet the gunpowder into a paste, and then tightly pound it into pucks. Once dried, you would then break them apart and strain out a consistent grain size of gunpowder. The result is consistently sized grains of compacted gunpowder, allowing much more energy to be packed in a similar volume, released in a more controlled burst of power. Then lastly, we need the ammo. For its early use, they would just use small rocks and such that would fit inside the barrel. As gun technology advanced, they eventually discovered the process of using a drop tower, where lead is poured down from a certain height, forming perfect spheres on the way down, which then cool at a pool of water at the bottom. For us though, we're going to use some lead molds made by Marty's Molds. Marty's Molds make precision molds that let you cast your own buckshot, round balls, and fishing weights at home with professional quality. Use my link below to get 10% off. Then it was off to Sandlands again for a very super remote range where we can test these firearms in a controlled manner. As always, everything is done with an excess of safety in a very controlled environment with trained professionals. Do not attempt to replicate this yourself. First up, we did a full charge of the non-corned black powder. Next, we did the exact same amount, but with our corned black powder for comparison. As you can see, it's a much better result. Lastly, wanted to test the accuracy of this relatively short snub-nosed hand cannon. So we erected a giant foam target to see if we could hit the broadside of a barn at some decent range. Several attempts and fine-tuning of our aim, we finally succeeded in hitting at least somewhere on the target. This weapon is definitely not very accurate. It is especially a short barrel one like this, but even the very first hand cannons were not very long barreled. As this weapon kind of evolved into more modern styles of weapons is when we get longer and longer barrels, as they discovered that makes it a little bit more accurate. So at this point in history, I think we're still kind of more in the kind of shock and awe terror weapons, where you're not necessarily sniping out people, but you're creating a very large explosion and things next to you are exploding at least. So this is very early on, just starting to finally get into the age of guns. But as I said, this guy might be a gun, but I did not show you how to make this one. This is almost certainly has to be a vase. I mean, look at the shape. It's a vase. All things aside, it is a little bit frustrating producing content for YouTube, especially more controversial topics like this. After our last video got demonetized, kind of sitting on this one for a while now, trying to figure out the best way to figure out what caused it to be demonetized and how to best avoid it and find a way to get around that. So I had a lot of different theories that maybe there's something very specific in it that was just a little too dangerous. They never clarified what specific thing is. They just pointed to the rules, very much taking it to the letter of the law. So I think our only response was to very exactly respond to the letter of the law and avoid directly violating anything on it. In which case, this was never demonstrated how to be manufactured. Completely different, very dangerous, not for anyone to replicate and try and do on their own, because I did not show you how to do that. The rules on YouTube are arbitrary, broad, and applied inconsistently, most frustratingly without much direction. When we started doing topics of guns, we were kind of worried that, statistically there's going to be a shooting again at some point. What the shooting I didn't expect was the CEO getting shot shortly after our last video went out. And I think there was a little bit of an overreaction of different corporations being a little bit scared of that situation. So that's one theory on why that video got demonetized, whereas all the other ones did not. Then there's just other questions of, are they not necessarily demonetizing, but not pushing the videos because they considered it a little too controversial. So I did this kind of little test with the short from a segment that's supposed to be part of this video where I make a wooden cannon. I did that as a short to test a couple of things. First, is our audience interested in weapons? And secondly, is that going to violate the policy? Because I showed how to make a wooden cannon. It's really simply drill a hole. And that video did not get nerfed, did not get banned. It's actually one of our best performing shorts we've done in a while. Interesting data points, and shorts seem to be held kind of a whole different standard and have a slightly different audience, so hard to tell for sure. But I'm hoping this video still does well enough and does not get demonetized, so we're able to continue pursuing and exploring more firearms related topics, because as the name of the series, How to Make Everything, implies, I really do kind of intend to do everything. So I don't want to have to avoid certain topics because of that. There's a lot more technologies that are in firearms, and I'm hoping we can still cover a few of them, but it'll kind of depend on how this video gets received. Because like all technologies, they all are kind of bittersweet. They all unlock certain things, and they also bring a negative side to them. And with that, I feel like guns should be covered just as much as everything else. So I'm hoping we can keep doing more videos like this. If you want to see us continue to do this, consider supporting on Patreon. I think just having that extra buffer gives us a little bit of flexibility to take a risk on a few of these. If we had even more support, we could actually just full on do videos we know YouTube doesn't want us to do. Basically the very beginnings of firearms. And from here, things advanced a lot further. And with these technological advancements, they're both, as with anything, interconnected with other technologies that we kind of develop and understand, including just drilling a straight hole is going to be incredibly important for both the cannon and the steam engine. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Hit the links in the pinned comment or description to play for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile. New and returning players on PC or console that haven't played in 6 months get a limited time bonus pack with premium vehicles, silver lions, and more. So go check it out now. So thank you again to all my supporters on Patreon. Without you, projects like this would not be feasible at all. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out other content we have covering a wide variety of topics. Also, if you've enjoyed these series, consider supporting us on Patreon. We are largely a fan-funded channel and depend on the support of our viewers in order to keep our series going. Thanks for watching.